Okay, I'll be back.
It's wow, that fucking pro.
Oh.
Like the pro thing is like I click on that, and on the pro thing it actually says like you have an audio file that says like recording in process, and I'm like, okay, interesting. He never said that before.
Yeah, mine says I have to consent to be recorded.
Yep.
Yeah, so please consent to record, man, to be recorded. I'll totally use it against you. I should put that camera somewhere where it's not, you know, on my touchpad all the time.
Wow.
Am I still like in focus for the camera, or is it like, I don't know where it is? I mean, I know where the camera is, but
Yeah, you're pretty good, Raf.
I'm pretty good. Like I don't even know what kind of shirt I'm wearing. It could be my Death SS shirt.
No, it's a Storm Warrior one. You're okay.
See, that's like the things, like I'm recording these videos and I'm always just like taking the top t-shirt from my pile. I know there is a shirt from Death SS in there somewhere. I just don't know when.
Hashtag cancel Raf.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the point is they're not a Nazi band. They were just like 15-year-old Italians and figured it was a good idea to call themselves Death SS because it's like the initials of the singer is like Stefano Silvestri, and it's like the death of Stefano Silvestri, and I'm like, yeah, I understand that was like 1979, but that was dumb. That was dumb back then.
I mean, that's part of the shock rock we inherited from Cooper, right?
Yeah, very much like that. But it's like I have that shirt and I know it's somewhere in there. And at some point, I'm gonna drag it out. I'm gonna put it on, and I'm gonna talk about something that is like gonna be like really political, and it's not gonna be about, you know. Let's not talk about that. All right. So did you all consent to be recorded?
Yes.
Yep.
Did you all get your beverage of choice?
Ready to go.
Nah. Brought to you by Hat Creek and Dr. Pepper.
All right. Well, all right. So I guess one of us has to start talking, and then we'll, take it from there, and then we'll figure the rest out of it.
All right.
I would just like to say, like,
welcome.
let's do like a second of pause, because that makes it so much easier to cut things. Like, you want to start, Cal?
Sure.
All right.
4, 3, 2. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Really Good and Kind. I'm your host for today's discussion. And today we have Raf over from Raf. I'm going to mess up the last name, Blue something. And his friend John, and we're going to be talking today about Dresden Files and from a critical lens. And we're going to talk about the first novel, Stormfront, and we're going to be doing this a few more times until we get all the way to the end of the currently published series. So without further ado, if you guys want to introduce yourselves or say something about yourselves, go ahead and start now. Cheers.
Cheers. John, you're next.
I'm next. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been reading fantasy for a long time, and I've been friends with Raf for a long time, so this is probably a natural conclusion to this. And I just want to say thanks for having me, guys. And yeah, that's it. Go ahead, Raf.
Yeah, I'm Raf. I read books. No, I can't read, but I like to talk about books. That's sort of my thing. And yeah, I'm going back to Dresden, and Cal said, let's do this together. And then I figured, yeah, let's do that. And we were planning this, and it just so happened to be at the same time when we usually just like have a beer with John. So I figured like let's drag John in. So that's where we go. And I think it's time for us to open our drinks,
All right.
which
Yeah.
is the classic drink for tonight is Radeberger, which is beer from Dresden.
Good synchronization.
Yeah, yeah, we've been training for like 15 years at this point. Cheers.
I'm drinking a Four Roses and Dr. Pepper because I'm out of beer.
That's a terrible thing to have. You know, that's bad. All right.
Okay, so where do you want to start?
I think we should start by like giving everyone like a first like basis to know where we all stand when it comes to Dresden, how many times we've read it or not read it, and so forth, so everyone knows, and then we take it from there. Cal.
So I'm a habitual rereader of things that I like and enjoy. So this going through it this time is going to be my 9th read of the Dresden Files books. I've been rereading them once or twice a year since Skin Game came out. And since I work at a data entry job, sometimes I don't have a lot to do other than type in numbers. So put something else on the background and it helps me get through the day. And it's been one of my favorite things to read. So yeah, I enjoy it. It's got some flaws, which I'm sure we're going to talk about here. Yeah, that's it.
John, what about you?
Oh, so this is my first time reading Dresden. Yeah, my brother's been a big fan for years, and I've been putting it off forever. So thanks for kicking me in the butt and making me read it.
Yeah, I read like the first 3 novels years ago, and I'm not quite sure how long ago. I can kind of approximate it. It has to be like somewhere around 10 to 15, between 10 and 15 years ago. That's when I read the first 3 novels, because I know I didn't live where I live now, and I moved in here like 2012, so I know it has to have been before that. I remember reading the first 3, and then I got like super bored by the 3rd one and didn't pursue it any further. And my flatmate at the time read a lot further, and he was like always telling me how great the rest is, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna pick it up at some point, and then I never did. So I figured now was a good time. So that's sort of the plan for now.
Yeah, bit of background on the series. They're written by Jim Butcher.
Yeah.
Who is from Oklahoma over here in the States. And he was going to college for creative writing. And his teacher who was not really kind in her criticisms of the things people would turn in. You know, she would like roll up their work and whap them over the head with it and say, "What were you thinking?" You know, if it was that bad. And they were always arguing about what's the best way to write something. She would have say, "Oh, so you need to write out character sheets and build your outline and all this other stuff." And he was saying, "Well, I don't want to do that. That'll give me the most trite, boring, formulaic fiction imaginable." And she goes, "Well, why don't you prove me wrong? Why don't you actually do what I've asked you to do, and we'll see what happens." And so he wrote the first novel of the Dresden Files.
Which is pretty
in the exact way that she asked. Well, it kind of set the bar for what the formula for urban fantasy would become here in America. So it kind of took the old PI fiction, like the Spencer novels by Robert B. Parker, or the Maltese Falcon and books like that, and used that same sort of structure with magic and fairies and vampires and werewolves and things.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it ended up becoming the norm for how that stuff is actually produced and the way the people measure up against it today, which is actually pretty cool. So this is the first of 7. Right now there's 17. There's planned to be 21 case file novels, and then a big apocalyptic trilogy to cap off the whole story arc and kind of be done with the world. So that's the game plan right now, for or at least it has been so far. So we've reached up to number 17, and that is out right now. And so let's start with first impressions. What do you guys think of the voice or the style?
All right. You want to start, John,
Go
or
ahead,
should I
Raf.
start?
You go ahead, Raf.
It's just like I said, like I read it before. It's like I like the voice. It's cool. I think the first one is like Stormfront is still very formulaic, right? He's using all the like the cliches you have from all those detective novels, and I found it super interesting that you just like pulled out the Maltese Falcon, because I have something one of my favorite urban fantasy novels that no one knows about, like quotes the Maltese Falcon on several occasions. That's Our Lady of Darkness by Fritz Leiber, which has this weird thing. Wait, we're not going to talk about that now. Point is, I love the voice. I love the way he, uses all these like overextended like metaphors, like because one of the things of like detective novels of that kind, and the slightly noir, slightly hard-boiled kind of thing, is to have these like overextended metaphors all the time when he's talking about like the dollar bill colored eyes and stuff like that. It feels like Max Payne with a wizard's staff, basically, in a way, because it's going overboard with all these like cliches, which is fine, because once you take it over the top, it's no longer just following those routes. It's sort of like doing something with it in a way.
Yeah, I also I enjoyed the snarkiness of the narrator, which is remarkably consistent throughout.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean the overextension of metaphors is pretty fun, and it's sort of speaks to a self-awareness of the cliches of the genre, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're pretty well known by now, so might as well have some fun with them.
Right, and if you've read old Pulp Fiction detective stories or noir stories, or you've seen any of those movies that have the voiceover right at the very beginning, and then whenever those characters meet a woman, they're either somehow related to them, or the most beautiful woman they've ever seen up until that particular moment.
Yeah, true.
And a lot of people, especially in the modern times, they have like a problem with the way that it presents women, which I can understand, especially like the prevalence of the male gaze has become like a real big topic over the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you're just perpetuating the stereotypes. And what I think it's doing is it's using the language of the detective genre to its full effect. So it's less of this author is deliberately trying to be problematic, more so that if you're writing in this particular style, that's how it's been done. It's more of an homage, because it's not presented as a good thing. It's not presented as this is the way people should behave. It's a character flaw that's used for comedic effect and to propel the story forward. So it actually has a purpose in the narrative.
Yeah, and he's kind of breaking that all the time, because you have always these asides like, yeah, sue me, I'm old-fashioned and stuff like that. So he's aware of the fact that he's like the way he's looking at things and looking at women, talking about women, is old-fashioned, to put it mildly. He knows all of that. He's like, so he's like, the fact that the writer, at least, and the narrator, which is Besson in a way, is aware of the problem that he's like, of the problematic side of what he's doing, makes it, I feel, much more like accessible than the unironic kind of way that some older detective fiction is looking at these things in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no.
What do you think, John?
Well, I think people that have issues with like the over sexualization in this novel probably don't understand enough to separate the writer's voice from the narrator's voice. You know, it's not, it's, I mean, it seems kind of obvious, but I guess we keep having to say these kind of things. It's not the writer expressing these things, it's a character in the novel, and the character gets repudiated by other characters, like, you're a chauvinist pig, Dresden, like, shut up. You know, so I mean, it's aware, like,
First,
yeah,
in the
exactly,
very first
right?
chapter, Aaron calls him a chauvinist pig.
Yeah, I mean, so it's out there, it's in the open, it's being, you know, discussed. So, and I mean, one thing I noticed about, like, there was a heavy emphasis on sex, sexuality, blah blah blah, all this stuff, and about 2/3 through the novel, I kind of like, what's the deal here? And then when you get to the end, it makes a lot more sense, right? Like, the big bad dude is the head of a sex cult, so you know, actually, that, okay, now this, okay, I see how this is all building up towards a point, but yeah. I mean, I don't think it's like overtly, obviously, simply just problematic. It's actually an interesting discussion going on there, you know.
Yeah, of course, but you know, on the other hand, it is like, it's a fact that, like, especially when you go back to these like classic detective stories, that like very male gaze and that like idea of the femme fatale and all of that, that's part of the cliche in a way. So it has to be in that story, and you can you know, subvert that cliche in a way. You can try to, and use all kinds of ways to do that, but it has to be in there. You can't just, you know, ignore that fact, that part of it, if you want to stay in that whole like ballpark of the detective story. You have to, at some point, you have to tackle the idea of sexuality. It just has to be in there. I mean, this is not just like this is not a monetary crime fiction. This is like a detective story.
You know who Dean Koontz is? The author. He wrote a series of stories called the Odd Thomas Collection.
Oh yeah.
And they're just like their first person narration, you know, mysteries with a supernatural twist. And it really made me laugh is that in the third one, it takes place in a monastery.
Yeah.
So it is a monastic detective fiction, which just made me laugh. So what is the central mystery in Stormfront?
How do you mean?
Okay, so detective stories, they start off with a hook for the detective, and that serves as the backbone of the novel.
Yeah.
So the first mystery he's introduced to is he gets a call from Karen Murphy, who tells him to come down to a crime scene.
Yeah, that's like another thing though. Is like, would Jim Butcher nowadays call his main detective still Karen? Is that a thing?
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, because here's the thing, she's introduced with a bob cut.
Yeah.
A blonde bob cut. And so it's like, she's the stereotype before the stereotype was a stereotype, which is, you know, hilarious.
Yeah, no. It's one of the things I realized when I was reading this. I was like, holy shit, she's even called Karen.
It is spelled Karrin though, as opposed to Karen.
Yeah. True. Is that actually like is that call though the first mystery, because he first gets the call from Monica and then he goes to meet to the crime scene.
Well, he sets the appointment, but he hasn't been introduced to what that mystery is yet.
True.
Yeah.
So it's to solve the mysterious murder of people who got their hearts ripped out of their chest. It's just gruesome, a gruesome image. And just like in the old detective novels, there's always the main mystery and then a secondary mystery that they always end up being connected in the end. That's like another trope of the genre.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the main thing that when I read this, like how close it like cleaves to the actual like formula of the detective novel, and just like, you know, adds magic. And that's it. And it's like, but you can like, the formula still works if you just, you know, have like enough, you know, like skill with like language and stuff to make it entertaining. It still totally works. And that's like sort of the main thing, is like you see that main mystery, and it's like, I feel like the detective story is probably the easiest kind of story to write, because it has that very, very fixed structure. And you take that structure, and then you can build the story from there. You can build it back from that. It's like, I have that evil dude, and then he does that and that and that, and then I'll build it from there out to, and you have that whole structure to use. And you can add all the you know, the other bits around it. So it's, I guess, for starting to write stories, a detective story or a murder mystery is one of the easiest things to write, because the structure is so clear, and there's like, you know, very few ways to you know, diverge far from it, because it's still about like, there's a crime, and at the end of the story, the main character, the detective, has to figure out how the crime was committed, and that's how it goes. And you can go all the way back, and that's what it does, which makes it so easy to do.
As far as world building goes, we're actually given a lot of the framework for the Dresden world here in the first novel.
Absolutely.
We are introduced to the idea of the White Council and the Unseelie Accords, which are really foundational aspects of the way this universe is built. So, John, what did you think of Morgan?
I like the description of Morgan as trying to pull off what Sean Connery looked like in certain movies, failing. That was really well done. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, at least my impression of the White Council in this novel is sort of the way that Dresden tells it. They're a bunch of, you know, interfering old men who can't get their facts straight. And I was kind of left wondering, like, okay, if the White Council is the magic cops, or for lack of a better word, how come they're not dealing with this? Like, how come Dresden has to go deal with this? And, you know, it seems like fairly obvious that Dresden didn't do the murders because he's investigating them. Like, how Machiavellian is he? Like, they just, like, the White Council seems to assume he's like this Machiavellian figure who's investigating the murders he committed, and it's like, that's a bit of a stretch. But I mean, yeah, I mean, Morgan shows up and it's always like, you know, like, enter the badass. That's the impression I mostly got from Morgan. You know, like, I am the doom of Damocles. Like, whoa, don't mess with that guy, man.
I feel bad for
you
Morgan.
ever had a white-haired man with a sword a mile long come and threaten your life at a cold night on the shores of Lake Michigan? And that's one sentence. Really built it out there.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Morgan though. He's trying to do like the right thing. He might be slightly stupid. But God's, like, if I were Morgan, I would fucking hate Dresden. I would fucking hate him all the time. He's got enough reason to not like that dude. It's like, it's not like Dresden is making it easy for him, right? It's like,
no.
Even if, you know, it's like, even if the White Council are the good guys, which you can assume, and all of that, it's like, you know, Harry Dresden, you're not, you know, you at least deserve a punch in the face.
which he gives him. What we meet one of my favorite characters in the whole series, this book, Toot Toot.
Oh yeah,
Toot.
The pixie.
He loves pizza. He's my man.
Yeah. That is a great scene, though. That is an absolutely great scene.
The way you get really good snapshot of how fairies interact with humans and how their societal taboos are completely different.
Yeah.
Because he said, oh yeah, there are a bunch of mortals in that house sporting. And it's like, what, sporting? And he's like, oh,
Sporting.
which gives you the first, clue as to what the end game was.
Yeah.
As far as the guys running a sex cult.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about the way the magic works?
Go ahead, Raf.
I don't know. It's like, I find kind of interesting to look at it, because it's like how actually strict is the kind of way magic works in this. Is it like just like you get power from somewhere, you channel it somewhere else, and that's how it works, which I love. And the idea of like having a sex cult to channel magic is, so here's the thing, it's like, don't laugh, it's like I was doing research from a PhD, which is philosophy of religion. I was looking at something, and for some reason, one of the books that came up when I was looking for like something completely different was a book called Modern Sex Magic, which was like interesting to look at. Totally not what I was looking for, but it's like, so that connection with like the sex cult to get power is something that I feel like, yeah, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Serious academics like me come across that all the time.
What do you think, John? How did you kind of understand how it works?
Well, it's kind of interesting because, I mean, a lot of the stuff, the way the magic works in this book seems to be drawing on like a lot of classical type sources, right? I mean, you have your standard like circles of summoning and protection, and then you have these like laws of magic, which I don't think they ever explained all of them. The first one is you can't kill anybody. The fourth one is you can't summon, you can't bind somebody against their will. And then it's like, well, now I want to know what the rest of the laws are because I'm nosy. And
you did that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting. But what did irk me was the pseudo Latin, and I don't know. I don't know.
The reasoning he gives for that is that to say your spell in a language that you understand actually does damage to your brain while you're doing it, because it's too close to your psyche. So by using, because everyone has, anyone who's a wizard anyway, they don't all use the same words to do their spells. They basically build their own spell language in order to do their castings. So his is like a mixture of Spanish and Latin, and and it's not, it's not anywhere close to being correct Latin, but I do think it's rather amusing.
I mean, he's aware of that, because that's the point. It's like he always is like, I'm muttering pseudo Latin under my breath.
Yeah,
like, he's not even claiming that this is Latin. He's like, no, this is pseudo Latin. I just like make it up, make it sound slightly Latin.
Latinx.
Yeah.
So Bob the Skull.
Bob the Skull.
Okay, Bob's cool. I wish Bob was hanging up at my house.
Yeah. I love the fact, because this is one of those things like, I have the spirit of air and he's trapped in his skull. How would I call him? I call him Bob. It's like so I see it like at some point I see it as like breaking all these like cliches and breaking all the expectations that you have from like a magic whatever. It's like, he should not be called Bob. It should be like, I don't know, some more like awesome name and nothing like that. No, he's Bob. He's like the wind spirit. Like, oh, okay. Which I feel is important to have, like, to understand that whole like atmosphere that like pervades the Dresden Files. It's like this like slightly light atmosphere of like, don't take this shit too seriously. This is, this is fun. And it's serious in its own way, but it's not like hardcore This is not the Bible. This is more fun, in a way.
He doesn't really have a sense of morality, does he?
I think he has a sense of morals. He just like he has that. Like I mean, Dresden has that sense. Like yeah, you know, I'm a wizard. I'm here to protect and defend the good and the wise and whatnot. You have all of that. But it's more one of those like ends justifying the means and stuff like that, not the other way around.
Yeah.
I was talking about Bob.
Bob, I mean, I think it's pretty difficult to understand that in the first novel because right now he just is apparently pretty horny for someone in a skull and wants to get out, which I kind of understand, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think most of us understand wanting to get out at this point, right?
Yep.
That's what I wondered. Like,
curve.
No, I'm not saying I'm not understanding. It's like horniness is all about getting out of your own skull in a way.
that's a good one. One thing I wondered though, he's an air spirit or a wind spirit. Was Bob human at one point and then turned into a wind spirit? Because I mean, or do wind spirits have erotic desire? Or is that just a human thing? I mean, I don't know. Some interesting questions.
It's a good question. I will say, read and find out as to that.
Yeah.
Let's see, who else do we get into? Okay, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Gentleman Johnny Marcone.
Yeah.
The man with a tiger's soul.
I have like one problem with that. It's like why does your that's like maybe a bit too cliche. It's like why does your crime boss have to have an Italian name? Is that actually necessary? Because I mean it's not the 70s, it's not the 80s. Like why does your crime boss still have to be Italian or like have Italian descent in his name?
That's a good question.
Is that just him participating in the cliches of the genre?
I guess that's sort of the question. It's like he's definitely like taking part of the cliches, but it's like when was Stormfront written? Was it like 2001, 2002, something like that?
It was written in 99. It was
99.
published in 2001.
All right, it's like that's the point. It's like it's Chicago and everything, but I get all of that. But it's like, is it really necessary to have the mafia, like the mob boss, to be Italian?
No, probably not. But it's like reading The Long Halloween, the Batman comic book. The whole thing is about the mafia family like tearing itself apart. And they're the Falcone crime family. So it's like, did they have to be Italian for it to work? No, but it definitely lent a certain realism of flavor to the story. Like, since The Godfather has come out, and even before that, in like old school gangster movies, especially in America, there's a heavy Italian, a Jewish, multicultural sort of flavor, like Irish, all of that, to the different gangs that would appear in these movies. And the common acceptance is that the Italian mafia is the largest, most dangerous, most competent organized crime family. Whether or not that's true or not, it's like true to real life, it's not exactly the point. It's basically using a shorthand to get your point across.
Yeah, definitely. No, I see what you mean. It was just like, because he's like, at least for this one, he's like the only mobster you meet. He's like, does he have to be Italian? Is that necessary?
So what did you think of the concept of soul gaze?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, especially when Marcone deliberately does it with Dresden. After we get all these warnings about nobody looks a wizard in the eye, and you shouldn't do that, it's dangerous. And one time this girl passed out. I'm such a badass. I'm Dresden. And then this guy does it intentionally to him.
Yeah.
And that whole, I think it's 2 or 3 paragraphs there describing the whole soul gaze interaction. That's pretty cool, pretty interesting stuff, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of a terrifying thing to have. I mean, I'm really glad I don't have that kind of power.
And so outside looking in, you know, we're not Dresden, right? We get all this world stuff from inside Dresden's head. But what must a person who is always deliberately looking past people and not looking them in the eyes, except for barely a little bit from time to time, how does that come across to everyone else? Right? Like you've probably had conversations with people who are bad with eye contact and they're looking past or over down at the floor or whatever while having their conversation. And so, you know, that can put certain ideas in your head as to what that means to that person.
Yeah.
But I think it's quite interesting because he's actually trying to spare them and himself the consequences of the soul gaze. Yeah. But to other people, it may look like weakness.
Yeah, I think that's like actually like an interesting thing to look at it, like from the outside. Like, why do people not look you in the eye? Is there maybe a reason why they don't want you to see what? Because it turns the whole thing on its head. Because usually when we're talking about this, like someone's not looking us in the eye, they're like, yeah, they're afraid to look us in the eye. It's like maybe they're not afraid to look us in the eye. Maybe it's like they want to spare us that whole look in their eyes because maybe that's something we don't want to actually do. So he's turning that on his head, which I think is pretty cool.
So who called the third act twist when you were reading? You just doesn't count. I mean, unless you want to talk about the first time you read it, Raf. But the third act twist being that the lady who hired him in the first place was aware of all of this extra stuff going on and was actually involved with it before trying to hire him. Who, when you were reading it, did you see that coming or did you not?
Well, it's kind of a convention of the detective story, isn't it? I mean,
it kind of is. Yeah.
I was waiting for it to happen.
He makes it pretty clear, like at the beginning, when he comes back from the murder scene and he meets Monica for the first time. It's like, she looks so familiar. It's like, how many women has he met up to now? It's like, there's like 2 options. Either she's like the sister of Karen or she's like related to the murder victim. There's got to be like a connection between those. Like, there's like not that many options. Like, I have like, that's like another thing like I want to ask you too, because maybe you're like better readers than I am, which I expect. Point is, so my thing is like, when Dresden comes to like the lake house, like near to like the end of the story, he opens these boxes and he finds these vials of 3i or whatever the drug is called. It's like, they look like all the other vials I had seen before. It's like, is that ever mentioned that he actually had a vial of 3i before? Because I mean he meets that like one junkie in like the police department, but like where is it ever mentioned that he ever saw a vial of 3i before? Did I just miss that, or is that just like it's up? Is it?
I think it is when he meets the junkie in the police station that he gets a look at what the vial is. I see you, wizard. I see those who go before and he who walks behind. She's like, why is he who walks behind capitalized?
Yeah, we know that. And then you have that whole thing where he's like, yeah, there is that thing that is following Dresden, that he walks behind. We know all of that. But it's like, I mean, I reread that part today and I was like, there's no vial of 3i mentioned there. It's like, has he ever seen that? It's like, it's not, it's not a big deal. It's like I just was like stumbling across, like, yeah, I've seen that before. It's like, have you though, Harry Dresden? Have you though?
Hmm.
Are you saying the editor should have caught that, Raf?
No, maybe Harry Dresden has like a 3i problem. He was like taking that stuff all along. I don't know.
Maybe he just thinks he's a wizard, right?
Oh man, that'd be a heck of a twist.
I've known people like that before. Yeah.
Yep.
No.
I've met a few witches in my time on planet Earth.
Yeah. Well. No.
Yeah.
Not getting into that, but
Yeah. Well, that was definitely like the one thing, like, to bring it back what you asked before, is like that twist is like, it's sort of like part of what you expect, because it's a detective novel like that. The first woman that talks to the detective has to be connected tightly to the actual case.
Mhm.
It's always like that. And with that, like, that one mention when he comes back from the murder scene is like, she looked so familiar. It's like, okay, they're related
But
in some
how?
way. But see, that's however is like an interesting thing that I found that I totally was blind to when I read it the first time round. No pun intended. Is the situation when they when he goes to her place, to Monica Sells' place, and the idea of depicting domestic violence and domestic abuse in the way he does it in that story, because that's certainly something that is a huge part of it, because that's that's like what drives Monica to actually go to Dresden and set that whole thing off, is that huge thing about domestic violence when it comes to when it threatens the children, not just the wife or mother in that case. And the way he
I
deals
think
with
it's
that, I
worse
found was
than
pretty
just
good.
domestic violence, because I think the insinuation is they've been using their sex orgies to power different spells, and then Victor started looking at the children in the same way he would look at the participants in his spells.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is like, no, that's so gross, like, and horrible. And yeah, so it's completely understandable that even having been a willing participant at first, once that sort of line gets crossed, that she's willing to burn it to save her kids.
But see, that's the point. Like, when she tells all that stuff to Dresden, she's like, she wasn't like really a willing participant. It's more like about fears. Like, she does that because that makes him not angry at her, because it's all about what it starts out with him, like, realizing that once he makes other people fear him and angry and so forth, they can tap into those emotions in a way. And then he realized that the lust part of like sexual like orgies and stuff also works. But that's like the kernel of it is him like using his power over someone else to tap into those emotions.
That's also an important moment for Dresden too, because at that point in the story, he's kind of beaten down, beaten up, exhausted. He's sort of on his last leg, and then there's that moment where he like realizes like the level of just like vile abuse that's been happening, and he gets the the classic hero moral outrage, and that sort of powers him through to finish the story. And like I like that part, because there's the Dresden's old-fashioned, Dresden's a chauvinist pig, and it's like Yeah, he's all those things, but there's also that sort of positive side of the old-fashioned, you know, mentality where it's that's it. I'm not going to take this anymore. Somebody's going to die, you know. Which I was like, yeah, final fight coming up. All right, cool.
Yeah.
That was definitely one scene that made me really like Dresden a lot more, because up until then he was kind of a dick, and he is kind of a dick, but
He is.
He's a little prickish. That's correct.
I can sympathize, you know.
I think that's like another part that is like super important about the Dresden Files in general. I think it's going to be more important in the next couple of novels, like how like accessible Harry Dresden as a character is for a certain type of person, like a certain type of reader. In a way,
Yeah,
he's like, yeah, I'm not a wizard, but I kind of get him. And they're like, yeah, but he's kind of a dick. Was it? So am I, apparently. I just don't have cowboy boots and like.
Oh, cowboy
So if you
boots
had
and sweatpants.
Now I'm more the
and
the
a
comic boots kind of person.
canvas duster.
The duster.
Yeah.
So if you had to pick a theme for Stormfront, what would you say is the central theme of the novel?
I think
You go first, Raf.
I think like the central thing is anger, and the idea of controlling anger or not controlling anger, because it's very much about that. It's like Dresden is always trying to control his anger, and on the other hand you have Victor. He's not controlling his anger, and the storm is very much the image for that, in a way.
Nice.
What do you think, John?
I don't know. I think Raf kind of nailed it. I would say one of the other main themes, like Raf usually nails it, so I mean, I shouldn't have let him go first. But I think one of the other main themes is definitely sex, sexuality, and sort of that the line of when sexuality or crosses into over sexualization and lust, and we see the dark side of that with the sex cult and stuff like that, where you know. Yeah, but no, I think Raf nailed it. That's all I got.
Sorry, man.
Yeah, I'm used to it. What do you think, Cal?
Let's talk real quick about Shagazoth or Shagaroth, the frog demon.
Oh,
yeah,
demon.
That shows up to his apartment. For a lot of people, this part of the novel either makes them say they're okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish this book, or they put it down and then they never pick it back up. This specific scene, because we have a couple of dubious sort of circumstances going on there. The first being that he caved to Bob and made a love potion. Then that he had invited 2 women over to his house, and once Susan got there, then the demon showed up, and then she, rather than consuming the escape potion, she consumes the love potion, which is yikes. And then you have the whole fight scene. I think that scene is incredibly funny, but I also can see how when someone would be reading it, it would feel incredibly dated and a little gross.
I feel like the one thing that makes it so dumb is that we know he takes the escape potion with him when he goes to see Bianca. And we have no scene whatsoever where he puts it down in the basement again. So it feels it feels super contrived, because it's like why should there be like 2 potions down there? Because you took the important one with you, and we have no scene whatsoever when you take it back down, because we're talking about your duster being folded upstairs and all that stuff. It's like, why do you think that the escape potion is down there? That's sort of like the problem that I have mostly with it. Like, I mean, yeah, the rest of it is like dumb slapstick, and you can call it sexist slapstick. That's not the point. It's like it feels contrived, because we have like the idea that her drinking the wrong potion doesn't make any sense, because the potion she was supposed to drink is not down there.
And didn't he just have like his second concussion of the book right before that?
Yeah.
Yeah, whacked in the head with a baseball bat.
Is that his second, or is that the first concussion? I don't know.
Didn't he bang his
Good
head on
question.
something before?
But see, that's not the point. The point is like, because so he has his first concussion, right? Or maybe the second, or whatever. And then he goes back to the police office. He talks to Karen and everything, and Karen drags him home. That's the point. It's like that. Like Karen brings him home, drives him home after he figures out how to not do the spell, or how to do the spell, but he doesn't figure out the storm thing at that point. Like, so he goes there. Then he folds up because he in her office, and she drives him home. She puts him to bed. She folds up his duster, and as far as we know, that dumb escape potion that he put in there when he went to see Bianca is still in his duster.
Yeah.
And then he wakes up. Then he wakes up, and he sees and understands, and like he actually notices that his duster is folded on the chair, and that all of that makes sense. That's fine, but the point is like, would Murphy actually take, because she doesn't know all that shit, she wouldn't take his potion downstairs and put it next to the other potion on the bench next to Bob. That would be interesting, but that's not what happens. That's not what happens. That's why I feel like the scene with like the laugh potion doesn't make any sense. It feels contrived, because it's like, and if we had like a scene in between where he comes home and drops the potion downstairs, because for whatever reason he keeps potions down in the cellar where they're nice and cool or whatever, that would have been fine, but that's not in there, right?
I see what you mean.
Yeah, that was
So-
the first.
Go ahead.
The first thing I thought when there's the run downstairs and drink the escape potion. And I was thinking, well, the escape potion's not downstairs though. Oh, I see what's about to happen. Like,
Yeah.
But I mean, I would really love that scene where Karen takes the potion downstairs and hangs out with Bob for a few minutes. That would be a great scene.
Yeah.
I don't think Bob would survive it. But
Yeah.
You think Dresden is a chauvinist pig? Wait till you meet Bob.
True.
Kick it incorporeal ass.
But I think that's like my only issue with that is like, it felt contrived, because it is contrived. And
So, what do we think about the scorpion totem?
I kind of love the way he deals with it, and the way he doesn't realize how dumb it is, and then falls down with the elevator. I do kind of love that. I think it's well handled, because you see that scorpion for the first time, and it's bad news. You know it from like the first time it shows. It's like, that's gonna happen. I can tell. And of course it happens. And the thing is, like, having that kind of thing, that where you have the premonition and it all goes through, is, if you handle it well, it's totally fine. It's not like, you have these ideas where you see that and like, yeah, this is exactly how it's going to be, and you read it along and it feels cheap. But that's not one of those. This one is like, yeah, of course it's gonna be like that. And then you read it, and it's handled in a way where it's like, yeah, of course, it's what I kind of expected, but it's also twisted enough for it to not just be cheap, because the scorpion is growing and so forth. And I'm like, okay, let's smash him in a fucking elevator shaft.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, if it had just been the scorpion, just doing regular scorpion things, it would have been really cheap.
Yeah.
But the fact that it kept growing and it's tearing apart like a metal elevator car. Wow. I didn't see that part coming. Like, that's cool. I like that. I like that part. That was fun.
I just also really loved Murphy's part in that, where she's like, where Dresden like goes in like the dumbest hero ever to save Murphy, and she just like snaps him with a with the handcuffs. I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah, well, you go around not telling people what's going on, they're going to make some assumptions that may not be correct.
Yeah.
So it's his own fault that Murphy doesn't trust him.
Of course.
Because he doesn't give her a reason to trust him by telling her the truth. Whether or not she would believe the truth if he told it to her is a separate question. But it's not even like he gives her the chance, because he won't tell her anything. And I do like how it's not presented as a good thing that he keeps people in the dark. It's his refusal to open up to other people that continues to get him into trouble, which I think is a great character flaw.
I feel like that's like one of those things. Like, this is like when he calls himself, or someone else calls him, a chauvinist pig. That's, I feel like, the one thing that makes him a chauvinist pig is exactly that kind of thing. It's like, I know, it's like, I'm that kind of person. I don't know about you guys, but that point is like, I'm certainly that kind of person who will totally hold stuff back to suffer in silence and stuff like that, make things worse all the time. Yeah. And Dresden is exactly that kind of person, and you see how it fucking hits him in the face all the time, because he's a fucking idiot. So there's some didactic value in reading Dresden Files, I would say. At least for like very like dumb masculine men.
I was gonna say, Raf, he's not an idiot.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. He's not an idiot. He's just a man. This is what we were brought up to idolize.
But see, that's the point. It's like exactly what we were brought up to idolize. It's like, was it smart to idolize that? Is it smart?
No.
He gets hit by baseball bats all the time.
That brings me to this next bit of trivia, is that when making the character like profile sheets for the writing class, which this story eventually became, he used D&D 3.5e character sheets to write up all of the characters that appear in the novel. And he actually rolled their character stats. Yeah. So Dresden is a 10 points of intelligence wizard with a 16 constitution. So he was like, okay, so he's not going to be the brightest, and he's going to get beat up a lot.
Yeah.
So
sense.
Yes, like that's kind of where those ideas. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Like, yeah, 16. It gives you like a point, like +3 on Constitution. That's pretty good.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
for a wizard.
Especially for a level 1 wizard.
It's like I was looking at, it's like, if you, when you said like he was using like D&D 3.5, it's like, did he actually roll him as a wizard or something else? Because he doesn't feel like a proper wizard. He feels more like a paladin or whatever. He doesn't feel like a proper wizard. He doesn't have like 1d4 hit points. That's not, there's
Well, then again, most wizards in D&D don't carry a 44 revolver.
yeah, that's true, but you know, yeah, that's true, but it's still like Harry Dresden has more than 1d4 hit points. Because his
All right,
cat,
so that-
his cat runs into him all the time and it doesn't kill him.
I like Mr. So fair warning, the next book, Full Moon,
Yeah.
is not as good as Stormfront. It's still an entertaining read, but some of it's like the one where a lot of the kinks in the style and the storytelling weren't quite worked out yet.
Yeah.
So it's still an entertaining read, but it's not as good as Stormfront, so just fair warning. Grave Peril, which is book 3, is really when the world is kind of nailed down to the way it's, and the storytelling is nailed down in such a way that it actually continues to grow from there. So
Yeah, that's the last one I read.
2 is the
I
lowest
remember,
low
I
point.
remember I remember Full Moon, and I remember Grave Peril. That's like the last one I read before. So that's,
Mhm.
I concur with you. Like, Full Moon is, yeah.
Yeah, it's not as great.
Well, yeah,
But,
I've read worse werewolf novels, but
Ooh.
not that many.
Mhm.
Not that many.
I've also tried to read Anita Blake before.
I said I've read not that many worse werewolf novels, but they exist.
Yeah, but that's a pretty common problem, right? The second book, the second album,
Oh yeah.
you know, where you spend years working and thinking on the first album, and then or book, sorry, same thing, and then you put it out, and then, oh, well, where's the second one? And then you rush the second one, right? I mean, it happens to a lot of hands, a lot of authors,
Yeah.
a lot of philosophers.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Plato's second album sucked.
But yeah, after Grave Peril, I think each story improves, not by a substantial amount, but they each improve over the last installment, starting with the third one, and going all the way out to book 17, which came out end of last year. So final thoughts and marks out of 10, and would you recommend? You can go in any order.
Go ahead, Raf.
I hate rating stuff. That's the point. Like, I hate rating stuff. I don't know. It's like a 7 out of 10, I would say, roughly. I would say I recommend it because it's a super easy read. It's so much fun to read. It's you know, it's a fun read, and if you've read any detective stories before, you can see all those references and all these like inside, all these like in jokes and stuff like that. That's cool. And yeah, like a 7 out of 10. Go read it. It's fun. What you gonna lose? It's like 200 pages. It's not gonna, you know, take away your like the rest of your life. It's not Proust's like In Search of the Lost Time. You can do it.
It's not Gravity's Rainbow.
Yeah, I guess I'd give it a 34 out of 52, because that sounds more objective than out of 10, and I'm not objective at all. But I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's a hoot. I laughed out loud. I had a good time reading it. I mean, is it Gardens of the Moon? No, I'm fine with that. I'm good with that. I mean, I would definitely recommend it. You know, and it's a nice, easy read, which is sometimes at the end of the day, you know, do you want to tackle Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, or do you just want to read something that's a lot of fun where stuff gets blown up and people die? Yay. You know,
Yeah.
I don't need heavy reading all the time. I'm not Raf.
That's wrong. I read Discworld every night to go to sleep.
So I would say that it's a light, entertaining, real fun read. Like you can read in a day or 2 days, pretty quick. It's not long, and it presents a really unique twist on or especially for its time, it was a very unique twist on the urban fantasy detective genre.
Yeah,
and it's the first chapter in what is now probably the most well-developed character in modern fantasy, because we've got 17 books with him now, and so he continues to grow and continues to develop and continues to become and change and everything else, and it's pretty awesome. It also has the most badass closing line of a book I've read in a long time, which is, "My name is Harry Blackstone, Copperfield, Dresden. Conjure it at your own risk."
Yeah.
that was so good. Yeah,
Yeah, that was good.
I'm in the book.
So yeah, I think that about wraps up Stormfront. In a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks, depending, we'll do this again for the worst book in the series, Full Moon, and we can roast it pretty hard, but also still enjoy the bits of actually pretty good storytelling that we get in that book.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us, John. Thanks for coming. If you're down to do the next one, I'd love to do the next one with you too. And Raf, thanks for coming. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's a lot of fun.
You got any online projects you want to plug, John?
Me, no. I don't do online stuff. This is my first time.
All righty. Well, I'm glad that we could be the first.
Yeah.
And here's to I hope many more. Raf, anything you got that you want to plug particularly or talk about real quick?
No, I'm fine. I'm just myself. I hide most of the time.
In the darkness.
In the dark. It's like I've once again retreated into Kurald Galen.
Well, yeah, this was great fun. Thanks for doing this with me. I've been wanting to do some Dresden